Welcome to another episode of Discovering the Book of Mormon through Science and Exploration. This is the fourth in our four-part series on Discovering Book of Mormon Zarahemla. When the Nephites were threatened, they withdrew from their outer cities and villages and fled to the city of Zarahemla, 3 Nephi 3:22-23. The Book of Mormon general and prophet Mormon tells us that his father took him when he was 11 years old into the land southward, into the land of Zarahemla. 2 verses later, he provides a probable reason why they gathered at Zarahemla. Quote, "In this year there began to be a war between the Nephites and the Lamanites." Mormon 1:8. From the limited description we have of Zarahemla, the city must have enjoyed important natural defenses. In the first 3 episodes in this series, we discussed how the ruins that the archaeologists have labeled Pukara match perfectly the geography, climate, culture, temple architecture, and architecture match that of Zarahemla. But was Pukara a fortress city like Zarahemla? No one knows the ancient name of the ruins the archaeologists have called Pukara. However, the geographical setting of Pukara would fit well into what we know about Zarahemla. Nestled in a valley, there was a large hill to the city's east. The entire east approach to the city was blocked by the Pukara River, and to its immediate west, and rising directly above the temple, were the sheer cliffs of the hill Lalahue. Some of Zarahemla's natural defenses are described in the Book of Alma when the Amlicites attacked Zarahemla. Let's overlay these natural defenses on a Google Earth map of Pukara, Peru. To the east of the city of Zarahemla was the hill Amnahu. Between the hill and the city ran the river Sidon, which ran by the land Zarahemla. Since the river ran north-south and the hill Amnahu was on the east side, it would appear that the hill Manti, which was near Zarahemla, must have been on the city's west side. Since the city was protected by the river Sidon and hills on both flanks and a man-made fortification of the Nephites, we see why it was written of the Lamanites that neither does they march down against the city of Zarahemla. The Book of Mormon was written in Reformed Egyptian, which contained Arabic characters. As a matter of curiosity, in Bedouin Arabic, which in part evolved from Egyptian, the words Zarahemla mean the flower to leave alone. With such natural and man-made barriers to invasion, it is easy to see why in the Quechua language the name Pukara means, quote, the stronghold or fortress. The ancient city was a natural place of refuge from enemy attacks. So when the Lamanites attacked Zarahemla, how did these battles unfold? In my book, Nephi in the Promised Land, I provide an appendix that details how the Nephites would have fought and defended Pukara against Lamanite armies. These battles will be the subject of future episodes. One of the most inspiring events in the Book of Mormon is the visit of the prophet Samuel to Zarahemla. Before leaving the city, the brave Lamanite climbed the walls of Zarahemla and boldly called the wicked Nephites to repentance. The Nephites shot arrows at him, yet they could not hit the prophet. The events of Samuel's visit fits well into the layout of the city of Pukara. The terraced temple walls, reaching over 100 feet and extending from the west side of the temple up to the mountains at the back of Pukara. The terraces at Pukara would have allowed Samuel considerable space between him and the people and enough time for him to pronounce his prophecies before fleeing. Having finished his speech, Samuel could have escaped without having to pass through the city. That is, he could have proceeded west by climbing over the hills on the backside of the temple complex. Let me summarize the setting.
Temple at Pukara, which I believe was Zarahemla. First, we know that Zarahemla was a fortified city where the Lamanites dare not approach. Eventually, they did conquer Zarahemla for a couple of times, but it's a very hard location to try to attack. First, you have the river that runs north-south along the edge of the city. Then you have the mountains protecting the city from the east. If they did come in, then they'd have to fight one terrace at a time to get up to perhaps where the people were fighting. Now, these walls ascend well over 100 feet in altitude. This could have been a sounding board for King Benjamin. Who knows? There's some mounds out here that the archaeologists aren't sure what they were for, but maybe they're the towers where they would repeat the sermon of King Benjamin. There was a fence that went around the entire city at one time. This city was 4 times the size of Jerusalem at the time of Christ. Could Samuel have started a speech here, because it's rather long? He then fled up here, gave part of it again part of it. They couldn't hit him with their bows and arrows. Eventually he could have fled up through the mountains and escaped. So I believe that Pukara represents a plausible model for the city of Zarahemla, because this area was the capital city of an entire empire that stretched from here down to the sea, influenced the Nazcas, all the way down to Chile.
Like Pukara, the Nephite civilization ended circa 400 AD, and with it, Zarahemla ceased to exist. As noted in earlier episodes, the land between the Nephites and the Lamanites was divided by the East Sea, or Lake Titicaca. The Nephites would have been the Quechua-speaking people centered at Pukara on the north side of the land, or the north side of Lake Titicaca, and the Lamanites were the Kola Indians who spoke Aymara and lived at the southern end of the lake. Historically, these two groups have always warred against each other. If the Nephites and the Lamanites coexisted on the Altiplano, it was never a peaceful affair. Archaeologists tell us that the Pukara people and the Kola Indians from southern Lake Titicaca seldom mixed. César de Leon, the Spanish historian, was informed by the Indians that many of these Kola Indians tell that before the rule of the Incas, there were 2 great lords in their province, one called Japana, let's say Zarahemla, and the other Kari, and that they won many Pukaras, which are their fortresses, and that one of them entered the lake of Titicaca and found on the largest island of that body of water bearded white men with whom he fought until he had killed all of them. If Pukara was Zarahemla, then the archaeological record should provide us clues as to how Zarahemla met its final demise, and perhaps even how the people living in the city experienced their final hours. According to archaeologist Ernest Ostig, the ceramic evidence found in the ruins of Pukara indicates that the city, with its temple and great walls, was abandoned circa 380 AD. He outlines the Pukara archaeological sequence as, quote, the chronological sequence of ceramic styles in the northern basin would be as follows: initial Pukara 500 to 200 BC, middle Pukara 200 BC to 100 AD, and finally Pukara late 100 to 380 AD. Ostig notes that from the archaeological artifacts that it appears that Pukara was abandoned suddenly and without a battle. The prophet Mormon wrote about Zarahemla, and it came to pass that in the 380th year the Lamanites did come again against us to battle. And it came to pass that we did again take flight, and those whose flight was swifter than the Lamanites did escape, and those whose flight did not exceed the Lamanites were swept down and destroyed. In other words, as the Lamanite army approached Zarahemla, the people dropped what they were doing and took flight from the city. Those that could outrun the Lamanites survived, while those who could not were slaughtered. The fate of Zarahemla should be a warning to all of us. Discover more about the Book of Mormon by subscribing to this channel. You can do so very easily by clicking the button below. It is free, and once you do so, you'll have access to all of our videos. Or you can visit our website, christinperu.com. That's one word, christinperu.com. We can have access to our books and also learn about our tours to Peru. Thank you.